For many years, from about 1929 on, a journal of McLellin's, William E. McLellin, one of the members of the first Quorum of the 12 called in this dispensation, went missing, and it was known as the Lost Journal of McLellin. It actually literally walked in my store about 5 years ago. I had a little store downtown Provo, and I had a fellow call that was a friend and says, look, if you're interested in McLellin's journal, I'll give you a couple of phone numbers you can call. I called them. They were in the RLDS Church, or Community of Christ Church at the time. And one of them was a descendant of a president of the 12 by the name of Hanson, whose name appears in the front of the journal, Paul M. Hanson. He'd been president of 12 of their church back in 1929 and published 2 pages in the Saints Herald, which is their ensign back then. Luckily, those 2 pages were done in photographs, so we have 2 pages that we could identify this journal from when it finally appeared. After a few phone calls, I was able to acquire this journal, and it was kind of exciting. In it, it's written like a book on McLellin's beliefs after he was out of the church a number of years. Joseph Smith had called him an apostate. In fact, at one time, Joseph said when he was in Liberty Jail that McLellin, the word came to him that McLellin had ransacked his home, gone through Joseph's desk, stolen my papers. And because of that comment of Joseph Smith's, a later forger by the name of Mark Hoffman came up with the whole story of the McLellin collection that was missing. Turns out the LDS Church had all the McLellin journals except this one, pretty much. By 1908, they'd been purchased for $50 by President Joseph F. Smith from a good friend by the name of Trauber down in Texas of McLellin. Only this book wasn't with it because it was more of a religious book rather than a day-to-day journal. It was something McLellin had been working on in the 1870s. He wanted to reestablish the Church of Christ on the earth even as an old man. He felt the man that could do that was his good friend David Whitmer, who you may recall is one of the 3 witnesses of the Book of Mormon, the only one ever to rejoin the church in his lifetime. And he approached Whitmer on that, and Whitmer told him, I don't have that calling. Whitmer was very honest with him. And he says, I don't have that calling. He says, I don't have the right to reestablish the Lord's church on the earth. Somehow he felt with polygamy and so on that Brigham Young did not have that authority either, and the church had been lost. But at any rate, McLellin started writing this journal and putting his beliefs in, and he got to the Book of Mormon. And even though he questioned Joseph Smith as a prophet, which seems a little ironic at this point, he did not have any questions as to the authority and authenticity of the Book of Mormon. He felt like it was absolutely authentic, which may seem a little funny to us today, but that was his beliefs. Under this is his own handwriting in his journal, and he writes under the title, The Testimony of Men. In open daylight, in an open wood lot, with their sensitive powers all calm and serene, Joseph Smith, Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris testify that an angel of glorified appearance and countenance came down from heaven and stood before them and took the plates which Joseph Smith possessed, from which he had translated the book, and held them in his hand and showed as many of the leaves or plates as Joseph had translated to them, so that they saw and looked upon them until they were entirely satisfied. I spoke to David Whitmer and said, David, this is the angel, I'm sorry. The angel spoke to David Whitmer and said, David, this is a quote from the angel Moroni. David, blessed is the Lord, and he that keepeth his commandments, unquote. These men saw his form, the angel, saw his glorified appearance, heard his words, saw all that he showed them, and then saw him go to heaven and ascend to heaven again. This was no collusion. These men could not have been mistaken. They either told the truth or they willfully lied, and how shall we tell which? How shall we know? This vision was in 1829, more than 40 years ago. And what has been the conduct of these men since that day? 2 of them are dead, and 2 living. Those who are dead testified, that'd be Joseph and Oliver. to the last hour of their lives the truth of the vision. Those who are still living, which at this point would be Martin Harrison and David Whitmer, are firm in their testimony. I visited David Whitmer, his good friend, after he was more than 65 years of age, and he solemnly declared to me, quote, "I saw the angel of God. I heard his voice. Hence I know of a truth." Martin Harris is some over 89 years of age, and still he carries the Book of Mormon under his arm and testifies to all great and small, quote, "I am Martin Harris in all the world, and I know the Book of Mormon to be verily true. And although all men should deny the truth of that book, I cannot do it. My heart is fixed. Oh God, my heart is fixed. I could not know more truly or certainly than I do," unquote. In 1833, when mobbing reigned triumphant in Jackson County, Missouri, I and Oliver Cowdery fled from our homes for fear of personal violence on Saturday, the 20th of July. The mob dispersed, agreeing to meet again on the next Tuesday. They offered $80 reward for anyone who could deliver Cowdery or McLellan, him, in Independence on the following Tuesday. On Monday, I slipped down into the Whitmer settlement at Independence, and there in the lonely woods, I met with David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery. He had 2 of the 3 witnesses. I said to them, quote, "Brethren, I never have seen a vision in my life, but you men say you have, and therefore you positively know. Now you know that our lives are in danger every hour if the mob can only catch us. Tell me, in the fear of God, is that Book of Mormon true?" Cowdery looked at me with solemnity in his face and said, "Brother William, God sent his holy angel to declare the truth of the translation of it to us, and therefore we know." He's underlined that word twice. "And though the mobs kill us, yet we must die declaring its truth," unquote. And David said, "Oliver has told you the solemn truth, for we could not be deceived. I most truly declare to you its truth," unquote. Said I, "Boys, I believe you. I can see no object for you to tell me falsehood now that our lives are endangered." 8 men testified also to handling that sacred pile of plates from which Joseph Smith translated that heavenly book. Anyway, he goes on to relate how some others, including Hiram Page in early life, lost their lives over that testimony. And then finally, he makes this comment. We know that McLellan was a school teacher. We didn't know what he taught. We know he was quite bright, that he was a writer. He claimed that he could write a better revelation than the Lord, and he was challenged on that in section 67. He sat down and made a total fool of himself and had to declare to his brethren that he was wrong. But he was learned in worldly things, but not so much the spiritual sense sometimes. He said, "I have read the Book of Mormon many times through and well acquainted with the manner of its coming to light and the circumstances of the organization of the Church of Christ as probably any man who's now living. I was personally and intimately acquainted with Joseph Smith, the translator of the book, for 5 years near the beginning of his ministry. And I hear say that he had one of the strongest, well-balanced, penetrating, and retentive minds of any man with whom I ever formed an acquaintance among the thousands of my observation. Although when I took him into my school, he was without scientific knowledge or attainment. And I know," and he's underlined know again, "that I do know," underlined twice, "that the truth of this great work of the last days. And I would advise all people, kindreds, and tongues to believe and embrace the book and the doctrine and principles and government and practices of the true Church of Christ, for the time of Christ's second coming is soon at hand." A powerful statement from an apostate late in his life as he looks back on things. And he made an earlier statement at the beginning of this that I won't quote, it's not worth it, but he went through and he said, Joseph deserved everything he got at Carthage. He crossed all of that out, probably the same day, because the ink's the same. And then from then on, the rest of his book is sweetness and light towards the prophet. Interesting man. Couldn't quite fathom the prophet, but he sure understood the Book of Mormon was rock solid truth. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel now for new stories to come, and feel free to share the link with others.